Hi there, thank you so much for joining me on this video. Do you want to make an army of goblins that you could use for tabletop RPGs or just general other purposes, because goblins are quite awesome and having an army of them? Why not? Well, today we're gonna carve that in wood. We're gonna carve these tiny goblins. I'm gonna do one carving to showcase how the general carving process will go. The cool thing is they're pretty easy to carve. You only need like a 1 by 1 inch piece of basswood, which is slightly longer, a carving knife, and of course your safety equipment. And with that you will have all the information to create a variety of different carvings that you can use for whatever purposes you'd like to use them. Does that sound weird? Welcome to my channel where everything is about carving mystical and fantastical creatures and making fantasy maps. Yeah, I need to come up with a better intro that I can recall what it was. Anyway, let's get on to carving. Now, what I like starting out with, of course, is always drawing the shape of the goblin we are going to carve on the piece of basswood that we are going to carve, which is this one in this case. Normally I'd use a squarish piece, well, rectangular is the correct term. Today I only found this one lying around, and I thought it might actually be a great moment to showcase you that not everything needs to be symmetrical. So we're going to use this piece, and we're going to use this face to create the drawing from which our carving is going to be based on. Now, there are different ways to do the ears for the goblins. You can do them downwards or you can do them upwards. For this carving, I'm going to do them upwards. The orientation of the ears can drastically change the character of the goblin you are making, so please experiment with that. Now, the shape of the face can vary a lot. I like mine to be a bit pointy, but you can do a bit more normal human face-esque if you'd like. In style of the one that is laying before me, they're gonna have a sort of pelt laying over their clothes as some sort of shawl. You could of course also decide to give them some sort of armor or just give them trousers. Feel free to experiment. For this type of carving, I like to use as simple bodily shapes as possible, as this really eases the carving itself and the difficulty in general. So yeah, we're just gonna start on carving with this one. I'm just gonna rough out the big shape. And the fun thing with this carving is, if you have a bit of practice and a sharp knife, and of course basswood. Basswood is the wood that I always encourage people to use for figurine carving, especially if you're going to paint it. Using another type of wood doesn't really add much, besides probably being a bit harder to carve. And now I lost my train of thought, which is always something that happens to me. Anyway, first I'm gonna carve all the sides of the silhouette, as I call it. In that sense, I have a way easier task of determining depth of certain body parts. For example, the sword is going to be pointing forwards to create a certain 3D effect, while the arms and legs are going to be hanging the sides of the body. And that helps determining, whenever I'm done with the silhouette, how much wood I need to leave for, let's say, the face or the sword, and makes the whole process a lot easier and less prone to making mistakes. Sides are done. Now we're going to go on to the face. Well, by far the farthest part of the face that is going to be sticking out is, of course, their nose, because goblins gotta have a pointy nose. Now, in the carvings I just showed you, I had a slightly different style of approaching making noses, a bit more 2D, and since then I have played around a lot with how I want my noses and faces in general to look. So that is going to be a slight bit different. A bit of a close-up so you can see just that tiny bit better how I am carving this. indenture here, so we have a clear border of where the head ends and the torso begins. Something that always really spoke to me is besides making character wood carvings, is imagining and creating world elements, like a camp where the goblins might be staying, having their campfires, roasting all different sort of things on spits, smoking, drinking ale, probably putrid ale. Why is it that goblins are often associated with less than ideal living conditions? That is something I've never actually really understood, but I mean, my mind obviously immediately goes to that sort of storytelling. That doesn't mean it has to be that case. So, we've got the face done, partly. For now enough. The ear is way off to the back in regards to this ear. We're just gonna hold off for now, and we're gonna start on carving the sword. The hardest part, I think, in this one is the 3D effect of the sword, but it's generally pretty easy. What I like to do is make a guiding cut, so I know everything above here can go to the back, everything that is in here, as in the whole sword, needs to remain untouched. So a prime example of making some guiding cuts is, whilst I'm cutting, the drawing slowly goes away, but it is still really important to know what I want to cut and what I want to leave, because at this stage, if for some reason I made a too big of a cut or didn't think it through too much, there'd be the option of just cutting away the sword. And while there's always a way to recover your wood carvings, sometimes it's just nice to have some sort of control and know what you want to keep and what you want to remove. So, I think this is looking like a pretty nice goblin. What do you think of it? Of course, the size of this goblin is going to be a bit smaller than the other ones, and that is totally fine. I think the only important thing to keep in mind is that it can be nice to have a certain skill for all your wood carvings, if you want them to work together, if that's something you care about. Some people don't, and that is also totally fine. The consistency I found liking is the 1x1 inch base, as it is also used in a lot of tabletop RPGs. So, I think the torso is right about done now. Now actually already comes a bit of the refining part. Now I'm gonna start refining the head and then moving downwards in the same way I did the other goblin carving. What I mean by refining the head is just making all the details that much smaller and more pronounced, and removing big chunks that make the carving seem clunky. What I find funny is seeing that this ear is actually a lot shorter than this ear. And what that means is that I'm gonna make this ear shorter as well, because I would like to have it somewhat the same. Not entirely the same, that's totally fine if it isn't, but just somewhat the same. Yeah, they have a bit of weird ears, but we're just gonna go with that for now. Like this. There we go. A bit like here, we're gonna give them a bit of a brow by carving away the relief here. And then for the last part of the face is just trying to remove all the hard edges, giving bevels to bevels, making the nose more pronounced, you name it. It's really detail work. There we go, this is looking like a proper goblin with a bit of a weird ear. But that's also the fun part, that weird ear can be a part of their personality, of their character. And really now the biggest part is just removing tiny edges, making tiny details. For now, adding
a small hole for the ears, so that later it actually feels like they have ears that can listen to things.
Now for the other arm, which is going to be placed over here, I'm just going to do a cut and a cut to the side. And it here, I didn't do it properly, so now a piece stuck over there. But yeah, you get the idea. This is going to be the second arm, and the arms can of course be as detailed or undetailed as you would like for such small miniatures, and certainly because if you're gonna make goblins and you're gonna use goblins, you're gonna use probably a lot of them. I like to keep them pretty simple.
As I'm quite chaotic in my workflow, although I make drawings, in the end I tend to just so much compare right to left, see if they fit, see if it feels good, and it never really is perfect in that sense. But what I take out of it is that in some form they feel natural and they have a certain thing to them that I find hard to explain.
Now, I'm gonna draw something on, namely the feet. So that way I know which parts, like here and here, can be cut straight out, and which parts I like
to be kept in, because I've done it before in that I suddenly cut away the piece of wood that should be their feet, and most of the times you find a solution, but it's not always nice to have to find said solution, so always keep a pencil nearby.
So now I have an arm here, an arm there. I don't like the amount of chunkiness this arm has. I'm just gonna remove some of that here. It's looking better, but I still find it way too thick. I mean, this arm is also quite thick, and I'm sort of fine with that. But the thickness of this arm needs to be somewhere around here, so I'm just gonna edit that just slightly, and just maybe even more than just slightly, to be honest. Yeah, so I've now really focused on this arm. Let's check if the carving still makes sense. It does, though. It was a bit on the bulky side here. I do believe the butt can be toned down just a bit over here. Of course, we can add details, like I did over there, with some sort of coat-esque thing. And then we're gonna add a small line over here, which is just gonna imply that they are wearing a sort of sweater or t-shirt. You can also make them naked, of course, but hey, to each their own.
This is also the part of the carving where maybe in the beginning when you drew your whole character on the piece of wood and now all the details are lost, the clothing is not visible anymore because you've carved it away. It's a really nice time to either draw it on again, but then to the correct size of the goblin you've created so far, or even maybe during the process you've decided, well, I want to try out something else. Maybe I don't want to give them a coat, but I want to give them a butler jacket or something. So yeah, I am always of the mind of just try and adapt to what you are making to get a interesting end result.
This is gonna be the goblin for now. And of course, this is just a showcase of how you can make one type of goblin. You can make tons of them. This one is a bit of a smaller one. This one has a really tiny head for some reason. This one has a generally bigger head but a slightly stunted nose. But that is how you create personalities in all of your wood carvings. So I'm just gonna cut this one off. For now, I'm just gonna stain it. It's a thing that I've been doing recently that I really like, and I think it would work wonders on here, but you can also use some acrylic paints to paint your wood carvings. If you want to know how I paint my wood carvings, please go watch my previous video that I'll link up here somewhere, because that shows how I paint my wood carvings. But for now, I'm just gonna cut it, stain it, and then we're done for today.
If you are making bulk carvings for, let's say, a TTRPG, besides the awesome style that a stain gives, it is also a lot quicker because painting can take up quite a long time before it looks cool, and a stain is just, you put it on, you wipe it off, and it's awesome. But hey, it's showcase time.
And that is it for today, people. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey on creating another tiny goblin. My process is often a bit chaotic. If it is too chaotic for you, know that you can go to my Ko-Fi page, and if you subscribe there for $1.99 per month, you can help me out. And besides that, I'll post all the patterns for this little guy, for other wood carvings I'm making on there, print ready, so you can just download it, print it with your own printer, and stick it on a piece of basswood and get on carving. Besides that, thank you so much. Have an awesome day. If you have any questions regarding wood carving or anything else, please reach out to me. I love helping people get into wood carving more and helping solve problems so everyone can enjoy wood carving and all the different facets of it. So yeah, thanks so much. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I hope to see you all in a future video. Have an awesome day. I walk away from my camera way too fast. That's annoying. Have an awesome day. Is this long enough? I hope it is. What a stain. So nice. It reminds me of the Warhammer paints. I think because they're all oil-based paints, maybe? I don't know. Oh, brings back memories. Brings back memories.